Hey guys, and today we're going to talk about strategic resources, because when you play on Deity difficulty, strategic resources becomes ever more important. And I just want to talk a little about all the resources and the top 3 that I think are the most important, and then give you guys a tip at the end. And so I'm not going to go over how strategic resources work since the update, because I hope that if you're playing on Deity difficulty that you would know how the resources work and the basics of the games already. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the top 3 strategic resources that I think are the most important and why, and in the process we will also talk about the other resources. And so in third place I place is uranium, and the reason why uranium only made it third place is because even though it is the last strategic resource that you can have access to and it is needed to create the giant death robot, is because the giant death robot takes so long to build. And if you don't have enough quantity of uranium to have a number of giant death robot, usually one giant death robot swarmed by enough enemy troops dies pretty easily. And so the giant death robot isn't as nice until you're able to upgrade it. And then even though you are also able to create nuclear submarines with uranium, the thing is that I prefer missile cruisers over the submarine is because it has a range of 3, which allows it to attack cities. And also it is able to stay outside of enemy range while attacking. So the nuclear submarine isn't all that good either. And then with the nuclear bombs, you can use those if you have a number of them. But the thing is that though, once you use one of them, usually all of the other civilization will declare a nuclear emergency on you, and then you're going to have to end up dealing with them. And so the second must-have strategic resource in the game is going to be oil. And the reason why I place oil in second place is because it is needed for all of your military units pretty much from the modern era until the end of the game. As you can see here, you got your modern armor, which requires oil. You have your missile cruiser, and then you have your guided missile or rocket artillery, and mechanized infantry requires oil. So if you are playing the late game, and if you do end up in these eras and you don't have the units to defend yourself or take control of land that has uranium, if you don't have uranium, then it's pretty much good luck, because like I mentioned before, on Deity difficulty it's going to be a struggle for any kind of victory that you want. And so the number 1 must-have strategic resource in my opinion is going to be niter. And the reason why I place niter in the number 1 must-have is this. As you play on Deity difficulty, it is very important that you're going to want to mix in some kind of domination with your game, no matter what kind of victory that you're trying to achieve. Because on Deity difficulty, the AIs, the best way, or pretty much the only way to beat the AIs, is to control a lot of cities and a lot of land. And you can't really do that without the right military units, which requires the right resources. So as we go back here to take a look at horsemen and swordsmen, they have the same amount of strength. So if you don't have horses and you have iron, you're okay. If you don't have iron and you have horses, you're okay. And then when you go into the medieval era, iron has a little bit of an edge because of the knight has a little bit more strength than your courser. And the knights, or the heavy cavalry promotional tree, is just a lot better than light cavalry promotional tree in my opinion. But when you go into the Renaissance era, you start using niter. And so until the update, I believe cavalry was using horses, so which, I mean, you were okay, but now it requires niter with the update of Gathering Storm. So if you don't have niter to pretty much gap yourself from the beginning of the game to the late game, and if you find yourself not have oil in your territories, well, you're gonna have to wait until uranium. And if you don't, then you're pretty much screwed. But if you do find uranium, well, I mean, it's so late in the game, you're in the atomic era already, and now it's pretty much you fighting to catch up to all of the other AIs. Now understand, in Deity difficulty, all of the other AIs are going ham at it. So if you give them that many era to get ahead of you, it's pretty much an impossible game to win. So that is why I believe that niter is the number 1 must-have strategic resources, because you have to mix in some kind of domination while playing on Deity difficulty. And then I just want to talk a little bit about coal and aluminum. And so the reason why I'm talking about these last is because they're not as important. As coal is really good to have so that you can have your battleship, which is the first unit that has the range of 3, which is going to be very nice to have in this time of the game, because like I said, is the very first unit, and you're going to be able to attack cities from the sea. Other than that, coal becomes pretty much useless as the era progresses forward, as that is the only unit other than the ironclad that uses coal. And with aluminum, in my opinion, aluminum is like the cherry on top. You don't necessarily need air units, in my opinion, as you can just construct a bunch of anti-air units to defend yourself or even your units. But having air units is good, as it can add support to your ground units. But in my opinion, it is not necessarily needed 100%. And also, as just a support unit, usually you can just buy enough resources to have like 1 or 2 air units, and then you're like good for the rest of the game anyways. And so on to this bonus tip. So in the situation that you find yourself not have the right strategic resources you need in order to create your troops strong enough to go into battle and take over the land that has the strategic resource that you need, a lot of times you can just go ahead and purchase some from the other AIs. But as some of you may know by now, that if you were to purchase enough to be able to upgrade or build your unit, it is almost impossible to buy, and it is quite costly. But I have found a way around this, and I'm assuming that maybe some of you have too. The best way is to buy the resource one at a time. So as you can see here, my 1 niter is going to be 10 gold. But if I do up that to 2 niter and I ask Canada here what he's willing to take for it, the price does not double as the resource doubles, it almost triples. So this goes on as, you know, the more you put in there, the price just goes up, and you would just end up paying a lot more. The thing is that though, this is really time consuming, and you can do this as much as you want, just buying 1 resource at a time. But it is a way that you can gain access to the resource that you need. And then of course there are other factors that will affect the price of the resource, but this would be one way to go about it. And so with that concludes this video. If you guys did find it useful, please hit that like button so I know. Otherwise, thanks you guys for watching.